Welcome to the first edition of the new version of Taiwan versus the World. And first, thanks to everyone who has supported the program during its first 2 years. It is thanks to you that we were able to reshape it into a longer and deeper version. We hope you will enjoy it. Each episode will include a conversation with a couple of guests and a report on a special topic. Our guest today will discuss APEC 2025, which took place in South Korea last week, including what US President Donald Trump called a G2, his meeting with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. We'll then feature a report on the new Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi and try to clarify who she really is, something sorely needed after so many confusing reports about her. Welcome back to Taiwan versus the World. So today with us are Patrick Mendis and Antonina Łuszczykiewicz. I hope I'm pronouncing it right.
It's actually Łuszczykiewicz-Mendis.
Perfect,
Yes.
perfect. Thank you. I would kindly ask you both to introduce yourself and what you are doing.
Patrick Mendis. I'm still a visiting professor at the University of Warsaw and also the inaugural Taiwan chair at the Jagiellonian University in Krakow, Poland.
I'm an assistant professor at the Jagiellonian University in Krakow, and currently I'm also a visiting scholar at the University of Oxford China Center.
Thank you very much. We have been discussing, both you and I, about what happened in Korea last week. It was a very busy event. And so I'm curious to know, what did you observe? There were a lot of actors present. There were, of course, Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. Korea itself was also playing an active role in the diplomatic discussions. Japan was very involved. So what are your observations in general about what happened in Korea last week?
First of all, I think this President Donald Trump's visit to Asia is a landmark trip. What he said and what he did, and especially what happened in Busan, South Korea, is, I think, in a way, is a turning point in a different direction in the balance of power. In terms of China came across globally as having upper hand over the US, bringing United States back to the negotiating table, especially related to the tariff issue and other balance of trade issues with the US. I think in that respect, China is the only country that did not yield to American pressure of tariff. Every single other country did bend into the US or to Washington, but China did not. In that respect, this is a kind of more than a landmark, and I think is a balance of power, at least in the perception-wise, globally, has changed.
So for sure, it was a big PR victory for both sides. We all know very well that President Trump likes to present every single conversation and meeting he has as a big victory for himself and for the United States. And this summit was no exception. So what Trump wanted to have is the PR kind of victory to show that, yes, we got a deal. This was pretty much a quotation from his own words. However, if you look into details, was it really a big victory? Well, indeed, there is some sort of balance. So China declared it will resume buying soybean from the United States. And let us remember that this is the way China was hitting the United States in a very selective way. China knows very well what are the pressure points in the United States and how to hit Donald Trump personally, because soybean is produced in the Midwest. And Midwestern farmers are usually the voters, the supporters of Donald Trump. So if they get angry, President Trump is in trouble. So China knew very well how to use those domestic issues as a leverage over President Trump. And fortunately for Donald Trump, China decided to take a kind of step back and let him have this kind of PR victory. But on the other hand, China also delayed the ban or restrictions on exporting rare earth materials for 1 year. This is not a lifetime deal. This is not a deal which will last until the end of the century. Just a delay for 1 year. So we will wait and watch, how this US-China rivalry is developing. And every moment, let us remember, every moment, every day, this delicate balance can actually be ruined. And every moment we can go back to the situation when, again, we will fall into the spiral of tariffs. Right now, they were brought down to 47% by Trump, which is also remarkable because let us remember that tariffs on India are 50%. So actually, China, which is the main rival of the United States, is now benefiting from lower tariffs than India, a long-term, not an ally officially, but surely a long-term partner of the United States. Partner in terms of economy. After all, US is the biggest economic partner for India, and also a big military partner. As I said, it's not officially an alliance, but if you look at various military agreements between the United States and India, you can say that, well, it has a lot to do with some sort of an alliance. And yet here, India is being punished for the fact that it did not join the same modus operandi as other countries like South Korea or Japan, which are, as we could see over the last few days, pleasing Donald Trump, praising Donald Trump, and fighting for as low tariffs as possible. India did not bend, and it is still being punished. So let us wait and see, wait and watch when India will actually be pushed enough to bend down and say some good things about Donald Trump.
And during the first term of Donald Trump presidency, Howdy Modi kind of friendship was developed when Prime Minister visited Texas, and then Donald Trump visited India. So that friendship during that time is ironclad, and just like Antonina mentioned, we have we mean the United States and India have 4 agreements. And not only that one, our relationship with India as the greatest and most powerful democracy in the world and largest democracy in the world are forging very well during the first Trump administration. Now it took a complete reversal, more or less. And now, as Antonina said, and a tariff issue, and it give a greater preferential advantage to China. And this one is also interesting when you look at the history during the first term of the President Donald Trump's time. And President Trump said, China is my friend. And during that time, he appointed Iowa governor as the U.S. ambassador to China, to Beijing. During that time, he appointed Iowa governor to Beijing merely because not only President Xi Jinping visited Iowa as an exchange scholar or exchange student many years ago, but mainly about 95% of Iowa soybean is consumed by the China. And not only that one, they thought appointing the Iowa governor, then they have Midwestern support. Merely because during that time, Midwestern farming counties and states all supported President Trump for his election. And this time, second term, he also got that one. But unfortunately, this tariff issue put soybean farmers in a very negative light, and there are wave of bankruptcies and financial difficulties the farmers. So this time is also that U-turn took place with American farmers. Earlier, that U-turn took place in the US-India relationship. Now there is a U-turn is the domestic supporters who were with President Trump in the first term, and now they are angry at him. So this is a kind of, I do not know what is happening in this kind of decision-making process. Are they really thinking about, thought through it? At the meantime, China, now after the first experience in the Trump administration, China turned to Brazil and Argentina to buy soybean. And now they are not only buying soybean, they are investing in other agricultural producers in Latin America. That put America in a very difficult situation because America is largely Midwestern farmers are rely on American export, agricultural export. So now they are hurting. Not only that, but also President Trump is giving $20 billion to Argentina in terms of turn back and buying Argentinian soybean back to China. And it also indirectly negatively impacting American farmers. So I could not comprehend why there's such kind of decision-making process taking place and not only suiting ourselves and also the destroying American farming base who essentially supported him. So China, I pretty much know about this one. They are very soaked in American history. They know constituency politics, and they know exactly which counties that soybean farmers live in directly impacted by. They actually have, just like Antonina said, they put the really a pressure, identify the pressure point for President Trump and understood the domestic political situation.
So there's a lot, yes, to unpack in what you have both said. It's interesting how we branched into mentioning India as well. And I was almost about to ask in the middle of the conversation why India is hit with such high tariffs, but in the end, you kind of answer it. It seems that India hasn't catch yet on the method to deal with Trump, which on the other hand, we saw a lot of countries doing last week, starting with the Sanae Takaichi of Japan, who seemed to have known exactly how to handle him, but also the South Korean government itself has been quite masterful in the way that they approach Trump. So are we actually starting to see the rise of a method to handle Donald Trump?
It seems so. And let us remember that during the first term of President Donald Trump, Modi and Trump had a very good chemistry. And Prime Minister Modi knew very well how to play it out. But this time, Trump is behaving differently. This time, some experts call it a very transactional approach. Some would even say that it's more personal approach. It's more about praising President Trump and actually getting his personal support and making him personally feel good about certain things. And only then can you move on to counting on his support on certain matters. And the main thing is that we have to go back to this short skirmish between India and Pakistan. At that time, Pakistan played its pretty weak cards very well. There was no victor in this short skirmish, but Pakistan nominated President Trump to the Nobel Peace Prize and said that Donald Trump is the one responsible for the ceasefire. And he actually brought peace again to the subcontinent. And that pretty much caught President Donald Trump's attention. And India could not follow up, right? Because if you have the arch enemy of India doing A, India has to go for option B. It cannot do the very same thing. So India could not join Pakistan in its nomination of President Trump to the Nobel Peace Prize and couldn't admit that, yes, Pakistan is absolutely right. It was President Trump who made us stop fighting. So this, of course, backfired. You can say that Prime Minister Modi, from the PR point of view, political point of view, had no other option. But yes, it was a point of no return. And right now, India is paying price for that. So I suppose some time will have to pass, some water will have to flow until a moment will come when Prime Minister Modi will have a chance to actually kind of repay for those so-called sins, at least sins in the eyes of President Donald Trump, and get the occasion to thank him, to praise him, to put him on a pedestal, and show him as India's great friend and a source of great hope for India's future and development.
I see. That's very, very interesting. And another thing that was noted during the events in Korea is that Taiwan wasn't mentioned at all. And yet we had the usual sea of pundits who were all predicting this and that, and he's going to sell Taiwan, etc., etc. And in the end, none of this happened, not even a mention of it. So why was everyone speculating about it when in the end it was not a point of conversation at all?
I think there are some speculation and assumptions that China, prior to the summit and for the preparation phase, they both agreed who is going to be in the meeting, what are the points they are going to talk about it. And they eliminated that's the main issue, is in other words, the elephant in the room. And the reason is, I think it would jeopardize the main conversation that Trump need to address, which is the tariff issue. And the same time, because there are tremendous pressure is growing against him by the own voters in the US. Not only this time the American farmers against, but also the consumers and also the people who elected him. For example, in the Appalachian Mountain area, in the down south, mostly the middle income people. So they are the one who MAGA supporters who are directly impacted by the tariff, and they are now expressing this unhappiness. Even some Republican senators and some congressmen and also their own supporters, leaders, are expressing unhappiness against Trump. So therefore, there is when the house is burning, you don't want to worry about what is happening in your neighbor's house. So I think that is the one side in the US side. They don't want to talk about neighbor's house burning. So they want to talk about my own house burning and just trying to find the water to get rid of the fire flaming. And on the China side, China does not want to talk about China itself has their own problems domestically. One is the debt crisis in the state and provincial level and the local level, and also the high unemployment with the university graduates, and also there is some unhappiness with President Trump's governing style, and the impact that is also taking place with the tariff issue that imposed by the Americans, especially in the industrial sectors. So unemployment is the biggest issue, and they wanted to also take care of the burning house internally, not to talk about so-called that's a renegade province of Taiwan as a major issue. Because of these reasons, I think the people who planned this summit wanted to really focus on their own houses, both that need to be in order before they need to talk about the Taiwan issue. Even though it is the biggest elephant in the room, they purposefully, I think, agreed this is not the time to deal with their own houses is burning.
I agree with Patrick that both China and the US had different things on their plates, especially China, because let us remember what happened shortly after President Trump left China. The very summit, APEC summit, took place where Trump was not present. And in his absence, China was de facto a leader of the APEC movement, APEC organization. The summit ended up with a joint declaration, not a binding one, not the one filled with details, but still a joint declaration showing some sort of support, some sort of solidarity among those countries, kind of led unofficially by President Xi Jinping and by China. So it seems that China played a very long game and perhaps didn't want to blur this kind of PR success by mentioning or bringing up the very controversial topic of Taiwan. But that does not mean that Taiwan is absent. Barely few days after the summit, Chinese ambassador to the US mentioned that Taiwan is one of the 4 red lines for the United States not to cross. Of course, it was very, general, without any details, without explaining what actually that red line is, where it lies, what would it mean to cross that red line. But China reminded the whole world, and the United States in particular, that Taiwan is still there and is still a problem. And finally, shortly after the summit, shortly after President Trump returned to the US, there was a CBS 60-minute interview with him. And during this interview, he confirmed that Taiwan was not mentioned during the talks. However, he said that President Xi Jinping knows very well what his reaction would be, and therefore he knows that the Chinese would not do anything to Taiwan as long as President Trump is in power in the United States. He rejected to answer directly a question from a journalist what he would do if Taiwan got attacked. He said that no, he's not going to give that kind of answer, but at the same time, he said the Chinese know very well how he would respond. So it was a kind of ambiguous way to say that, China would probably reject its decision if it wanted to go against Taiwan or openly attack Taiwan. So as always, the United States is balancing on a thin line, not saying directly what its reaction would be, but at the same time, a little bit passively aggressively saying or expressing that China should take hands off Taiwan.
I think what Antonina is saying is what generally termed as a strategic silent in a Chinese side, because they know the answer. They don't want to waste that time, and this is strategic silent will speak, I think, very loudly. At the same time, President Xi Jinping wanted to come across as a very confident leader and a stable leader. Now the world is completely uncertain about America and its global behavior from Washington. Who to trust? That in God we trust kind of phrase that America had it for many years. In God we trust now is kind of disappeared in the common global politics. And now President Xi Jinping come as in America's absence of God in trust, now trust me. And I think that one you can see when President Xi Jinping had that the Shanghai Cooperation Summit, and where that Prime Minister Modi was in China soon after the Pakistan-Indian ceasefire, and because of the tariff issue imposed by US on India. So now pretty much all the global leaders like China, Russia, South Africa, and the Brazil, this what they say called the countries of the South, and these 4 leaders found President Xi Jinping is the leader we can trust. So therefore, I think that is why I said, and this time around in the summit in South Korea, President Xi Jinping came across as the leader in America's absence of God in trust, now trust me, kind of thing. I think that's one is also resonate with the world. Then in absence of America. Now, this is absence of silence on Taiwan issue also come across as a strategic confidence that he radiates from Beijing, I think.
That's very interesting. It seems like, contrarily to what was being said before the meeting starts, it was actually a very pragmatic. It seems like the event was a bit misunderstood globally before it started.
I think that the strategic silent, just like Antonina mentioned about it, I think President Xi Jinping knew, and China's strategy is don't waste on time on this issue. We know what Trump would say, and don't go there. Let's stay focused on the tariff because it also hurt China and also hurt American consumers and the farmers. So therefore, they wanted to resolve that one and let's focus on this one. I think in whatever the President Trump would say, China is more strategic. Remember that when the President Xi's statements that reported by the Financial Times, he said, "Oh, I like MAGA, Make America Great Again, and it is similar to communist parties make China great again. You know, the Chinese rejuvenation of the Chinese nation or the China dream." So, in essence, he said, I agree with President Trump. Your MAGA and China dream go hand in hand. So, in a way, he was also giving a credit to President Trump. At the same time, he was neutralizing the President Trump's coming in to talk about anything else, or anything else mean the Taiwan issue, for example. He pretty much also took the audience. He is in control. And I think President Xi Jinping is portrayed in a very, very skillful, very clever way. He knew how to handle rather than giving garland from South Korea or giving all the praises from other countries. He actually used in a way strategic way to credit President Trump. Yes, your MAGA is make America great again is very, very good. We support that one. So in that way, President Xi is kind of manipulating, very, very brilliant, very, very cognitive manipulation was going on there.
But the fact that Taiwan was not discussed does not mean that Taiwan was absent, because there was a Taiwanese delegate to the APEC summit. After all, Taiwan is present, is a member of APEC. So that's for Taiwan, it's very important because, as we know, for many other organizations and platforms, it is being blocked by China. However, delegate was there, and actually Prime Minister Takaichi took pictures with him and put it on her social media. After which China, of course, criticized her harshly. So that was a very important, although kind of missed point or missed presence of Taiwan during the APEC summit. Moreover, we have to also remember that next year, APEC summit is planned to take place in China. So the big question is what will happen to the Taiwanese delegate at that time? Will he or she be allowed to come? Will he or she be guaranteed safety, and access to all the meetings and treated with respect and so on and so forth? China right now is declaring that, of course, all the members will be treated the same way, equal way, but as long as they respect the one China principle. So that might automatically rule out the presence of the Taiwanese delegate next year. And it's another way, another element of this big game that China is playing right now, which is not only about practical economic or political issues, but also about PR and image building.
Yes, that actually leads me
No,
to another topic that I wanted to discuss with both of you, because you have been talking and writing about what you call China's diplomacy of anger, which is related to Taiwan. Would you be able to explain to us a bit more about it?
So this is a kind of realistic approach, or a kind of mixture of realistic and constructivist approach to analyzing China's behavior. So basically, diplomacy of anger is an idea that emotions, and in this case, anger in particular, can be used as a political tool. So it's an assumption that emotions are not just genuine, natural, but they can be performed on purpose for achieving certain strategic goals. So in various articles that we co-authored together, we will focusing especially on China-Taiwan-US triangle and how emotions played out in this triangle, and how China has been using deliberately emotions to show its political stance or to put pressure on another country. And anger in this case is a variety of actions and behaviors. This is verbal communication saying that we are angry and using very harsh words, which suggest that a person which is, making those statements is indeed angry about something. This can also be very symbolic. It can be leaving meetings. It can be canceling meetings and communication. We might remember not so long ago, there was a spy balloon which was shot down over the American territory, a spy balloon which flew to the United States from China. And after that incident, China was also expressing its anger over the United States. After Nancy Pelosi's Taiwan visit several years ago, China also canceled various communication channels. So there were no back-to-back meetings happening at that time. No communication. Many planned meetings were canceled in advance, and so on and so forth. And of course, it all culminated in previously unannounced military drills that China carried out around Taiwan in order to perform its anger and show to the whole world that it is very, discontent about the fact that one of the main leaders of the United States arrived in Taiwan, actually put her foot on the Taiwan soil, which was a way of crossing the red line in China's own mindset and China's worldview. So what we are trying to say, what we are trying to show in our analysis is that emotions are a very important element of this whole jigsaw. After all, we are all human beings. People who participate in those meetings, leaders of those countries, they are human beings as well. So emotions is something you cannot simply take out of the equation. We are not AI, we are not DeepSeek, we are not ChatGPT. Emotions is something that is present every single minute, every single second of our lives. Sometimes they can be helpful, sometimes they can be disastrous, and sometimes they can also be used as tools for exerting pressure or as some sort of leverages.
So you probably also seen, Julian, over the years, more until recently, wolf warriors are part of this strategy. I think this is a diplomacy of anger, or the emotional diplomacy is an instrument of diplomacy that China is brilliantly using it, most of the time expressing anger. I think at the summit, it is also emotional diplomacy at play, where Chinese leader is controlling his emotion and controlling President Trump. And in the sense, giving his the praise, saying, oh, we support MAGA. It is similar to our China dream. Or we support this one, and we will go back to our original tariff level. And saying those kind of thing, it is also part of the emotional diplomacy that China is exercising, both sometimes negatively, sometimes positively. And you can see that in what is coming out of in Washington, it is also a leadership in emotional leadership. But that emotional leadership coming out of China is very, very much is the instrument of to their own advantage. It is thought through it, deliberate, comprehensive, and it is a tool used for their own advantage. As opposed to Washington, it has no comprehensive, deliberate, and purpose driven. It is all by somebody, a child screaming for attention. Something like that, you can see there is a certain way of using emotional diplomacy in two different capitals are very different. One is very purpose driven. Another one is a purpose driven for sometimes does not perceive as for the national interest. And China is, on the other hand, is looking at the Chinese nation. And in the US, it does not come across as is part of the Americanism, that what the founding fathers wanted to talk about, Americanism of the national interest.
Antonina and Patrick, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you so much for your insights, and wishing you the best for the future.
Thank you so much for inviting us, and greeting from again. Thank you from Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Julian. See you again in Taiwan at some point.
Another country in the news just near Taiwan is Japan. In just a few days in office, Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi has generated a lot of discussion. Does she belong to the far right? What does she mean for the region? Is she against immigrants? And of course, what does it all mean for Taiwan? Amid all this noise, I talked to two people who witnessed her rise in Japan and asked them what they observed. The first is Professor Ingyu Oh of Kansai Gaidai University in Osaka, and the first thing he says is that Sanae Takaichi is a pragmatic person.
She's very pragmatic. She's loyal to her own emotional needs. She has a very practical way of managing her life, personal life. But then, like her husband, who is very liberal, and they divorced because of political ideology differences. But then she married him again, despite political differences, ideological differences. So she's very practical in her personal life. But in their political life, she has a second version of herself, second reality about her identity. That is that she's very, adamant, and she's very faithful to her political ideology in politics. So she is most trusted prime minister candidate at the time of election in the LDP. So that's why she got the majority to be elected as a leader of the new LDP party after the Abe's death. She has led her life as a very pragmatic person, maintaining her right-wing ideology all the way. So she is very popular among, mainstream, LDP people on top of, right-wing people within the LDP faction plus new coalition partner. So she represents both LDP and right-wing. So on the other hand, she is very pragmatic, meaning she's very friendly with other possible opposition parties and other, neighboring countries. Before she became prime minister, all these pragmatism with right-wing ideology worked for her. Those helped her to become the prime minister. But after she became the prime minister, without LDP majority, so she had to form this coalition party partnership. In that case, this pragmatism aligned with right-wing ideology will be a major problem for her.
The other person I talked to is Rath Wang, and he also uses the word pragmatic to describe Mrs. Takaichi.
I am currently senior fellow at Safe Spaces, and prior to that, I worked in political campaigns in Taiwan, Japan, and the United States. And I've lived in 4 countries, including Japan, Taiwan, the United States, as well as Thailand. If you look at the new prime minister's career, Sanae Takaichi has been a pragmatic politician since her debut many decades ago. If you look at her days as a minister under the Abe administrations and also other LDP administrations, you've seen that she's tackled a wide range of issues that are not radical, as people say far right extremists, as we see in, say, Europe or the United States.
This is the question everybody asks. Is Sanae Takaichi a far-right politician or not? Is she a feminist figure or not? Is she against immigrants or is she just managing a difficult coalition?
On the other hand, then she has an internal political problem that she has to represent the extreme right-wing faction of the LDP party, especially after the coalition that she just made with the right-wing party in Japan. So they formed a coalition government. So she has to please the new coalition partner who represents her political ideology. So she cannot be always pragmatic in dealing with foreign, neighborhoods and United States and Russia and China and North Korea all the time. She has to please these new coalition partners who expects more like a hardline, hawkish posture, attitude toward these countries. So you have North Korean missile crisis, and you have Chinese, decoupling with China problem. And then you have, all kinds of diplomatic clashes with South Korea. So there are three immediate problems. And then you have Taiwan issue, which is that what is her posture about Taiwan? Is she going to maintain Taiwan belonging to China politically, or she will support Taiwan independence? Which one? So she has a very, thorny, conflictual, split decisions she has to make about this. So that's the ultimate, possible scenario if she sides with hardliners, or if she doesn't side with hardliners. If she sides with the hardliners, then the problem is United States. All the neighbors will be very angry at her. So therefore she has to walk on a very tight rope here.
Some comments in the media have said that she's very anti-feminism or anti-women's rights or gender rights, which is also untrue because I myself, having lived in Japan, worked in corporate Japan, and worked on diversity initiatives, have actually seen her as a minister in the cabinet of the late Abe Shinzo. She actually was one of the most strongest, staunchest proponents in making change happen, in making corporate Japan more equitable for women to work, from equitable pay, positions, to negotiating flexible arrangements where women could juggle between childcare, career advancement, coming to work when they are most adept and also convenient for their busy schedules in tackling life. And she's not basically racially profiling anyone in Japan. There has been allegedly a lot of Kurdish refugees from Turkey that have come in to work in Japan, many of them working illegally or working under refugee status, where there have been fact findings and analyses that have later revealed that many of these refugees actually are not political asylum refugees, but it has caused a bit of an uproar. So there's been an anti-immigrant backlash from some of these incidents. But what Takaichi has said is that she's not closing the door on that, but she's reamping the system to close down on loopholes where the system cannot be taken advantage of. It's not that she's closing immigration to Japan. Companies, small businesses need that labor. And Japan's not cutting off labor just because Takaichi is the prime minister. And if you look at her policies, she has never once said that she's going to close Japan off and not let immigration flow into Japan.
To become the prime minister as the first Japanese woman, she had to buy into this right-wing rhetoric, right-wing ideology. So the reason is because she had to be the Abe's hand-picked person, Abe's protege, which automatically means you have to be in a right-wing, extremely right-wing politician in Japan within the LDP faction. That's why she's different from Koizumi faction, who is representing more like a mainstream LDP, sort of liberally leaning, middle of the right line kind of LDP political ideology. So that's the conflict right here. She was originally right-wing, but she wanted to be very pragmatic personally. But to become the prime minister, she had to make a compromise. She made a compromise with extreme right-wing people, not the majority LDP people. Because she could not make any compromise with the majority people, because majority LDP wanted Koizumi.
This brings us to her relationship with China. Is Beijing shaping the narrative around Sanae Takaichi? And what is her relationship with China really like?
Anything where China's neighbors beef up its defenses or strengthens its capabilities or determination to defend itself, China, no matter what, would speak up and speak up against it. And so that has caused reason for the international media, when they pay attention to messaging that comes out of China or in any way is shaped directly or indirectly by China, to portray her as being right-wing. Actions could be, say, defining more clearly the role of the Japanese self-defense forces, which Takaichi has said for a long time. And this is not a huge deviation from what we've seen with her predecessors. What Takaichi is calling for is to redefine the role of the Japan self-defense forces. If Japan has a security emergency, as a security threat, how do these defense forces respond to that threat? And more clearly defining what its defense forces can do, say in terms of naming this to more a self-defense military, but armed forces in the name of defense, not going on the offensive. The elephant in the room is China. They say a lot of media, international media around the world talks about her being an anti-China hawk or simply very radical on China. This is also untrue, because if you look at the political atmosphere in the Asia Pacific, you can see that China's military buildup has alarmed many of its neighbors, especially Japan being right next door, and Taiwan, and you see military increase more than 10% each year on year, and you see coercive activities, not just around Taiwan. We feel it because me and you are here in Taiwan, but people in Japan, when I was living in Japan, you feel it too, because you see Chinese military boats coming into Japanese waters or nearby waters, and you see China increasing its activities, both air, sea, and also even joint exercises with Japan's three main security challenges, or threats, so to say, if you want to be direct. Even other politicians in Japan from more left, progressive, liberal parties, as the West labels them, saying similar things, although not as bold, but the sentiment is similar. What is ironic is, if you look at the Communist Party of Japan itself, the same name, condemning Chinese activities, I suppose you could say the sentiment is similar among the parties in Japan because of this similar security threat. But in terms of clear messaging, you see Takaichi being more direct about it. But in terms of really deviating of what Japan needs to do, or addressing the security threat or talking about it, when it comes to security itself, is actually not that different. So it's not as if Takaichi is trying to rebuild Japan's military into invading other countries, as some say, hard-wing, right-wing nationalists. You don't really see that happening. I mean, you'd see her taking a harder line, a more specific line, but it's not like she's creating this new narrative, make Japan the military power of Asia again. None of that is happening.
And of course, the other major actor in this equation is South Korea, a country with a notoriously complex relationship with Japan. Yet Mrs. Takaichi has shown a personal attachment to Korea.
She's the only outspoken prime minister in Japanese history who is also a woman, first-time woman prime minister, who outspokenly said she's a Hallyu fan. And also she loves Korean food. She watches Korean drama all the time. So this is like a banned word in Japanese politics for many decades. But she's opening up, she's coming out saying she's a Hallyu fan. That means she's a very pragmatic person.
She's also been called being anti-Korean. And just a few weeks ago, after she became PM, one reporter asked her what her Korean policy would be in terms of does she hate Korea or some sort of that question, provoking the sense of her being anti-Korean. And she came out and said, I use Korean cosmetics. I watch Korean entertainment. I'm very fond of Korea, and I look forward to working with the Korean president. Taking a harder line does not always equate to her being anti-Korean per se.
She is the first Hallyu fan, a woman Hallyu fan who became the prime minister in Japan. That's one new thing about prime ministership in Japan that has opened up a new possibilities between Korea and Japan on the one hand. Also, on the other hand, she's also extremely right-wing person for the first time in post-war Japanese history, who, like after Abe, but the first extremely right-wing female prime minister for the first time in Japanese history to become the prime minister. So she has two faces. First, a Hallyu fan who became a prime minister, and the first woman prime minister who was extremely right-wing person.
And last but not least, this leads us to Taiwan. There has been an avalanche of commentary on what Sanae Takaichi means for Taiwan. Everyone has an opinion, but if we stick to the facts, the question remains open.
This is a big mistake about her, or misunderstanding about her, is that this is also American concern, which is based on misunderstanding that she is a really outspoken Taiwan supporter. She is not. She is sympathetic with Taiwan only on the image, probably wrong image that Taiwan loves Japan, Taiwan is anti-China, Taiwan will remain pro-Japan. But she knows, I think she's not stupid enough to believe that. So she knows that Taiwan has multiple identities. Taiwan has a diverse political parties and groups representing different ideologies and interests. So she has never promised that she will support Taiwan independence. She talked with Xi Jinping. So she had a great time talking with Xi Jinping, although she mentioned a couple of things like we really worried about human rights in China. But that was the only thing. She never mentioned about Taiwan this time in her first meeting with Xi Jinping. So this is a big misunderstanding within Taiwan maybe too, but within America too, that she's not an outspoken Taiwan supporter.
Some say there was actually comments out of China saying that Takaichi provoked China, that she actually met with the delegation in Korea from Taiwan, the Taiwan representative, to purposely provoke China. But I don't think that is accurate at all. The LDP parliamentarians across almost all parties in Japan frequently meet with Taiwanese delegations, and Takaichi, through those channels, have fostered decades-long relationships with Taiwan. She was in Taiwan in April. So this just fits in with her larger narrative in terms of securing Japan by diversifying, not cutting ties with China, but diversifying and strengthening strategic or economic alliances with like-minded democratic partners. And Taiwan fits perfectly into that. So I don't believe that she's taking these moves because she's a China hawk.
On other news this week about Taiwan and the world, since we talked about APEC, the next summit will be hosted by China, and because Taiwan is a participant, Beijing has demanded that it adhere to its vision of Taiwan. The United States Department of State has already said that Taiwan must be allowed full and equal participation. On other news, Taiwan was ranked 10th out of 69 countries in terms of digital competitiveness in a study conducted by the International Institute for Management Development. This is an academic institute based in Switzerland. And finally, the Manila Dialogue on the South China Sea concluded in the Philippines capital. Participants from around the world discussed the ongoing conflicts in the islands and the various overlapping claims. The debates can be viewed online and are worth watching for anyone concerned about Taiwan's security. Thank you for listening to Taiwan versus the World, and talk to you soon.